All right, welcome everyone. Let's gather around for this one. Tonight's explainer isn't going to be our usual breakdown of data or historical records. Instead, I really want you to treat this as a dark, suspenseful bedtime story for adults. We're diving into an incredibly evocative piece of mythos today, unpacking the terrifying lore of a grim, Reaper-type entity descending from the high mountain peaks. So let's jump right into this dark autopsy of a myth and see exactly what makes this narrative so deeply, deeply unsettling.
Listen to this. The air in the high mountain pass did not flow. It curdled. Right away, we're completely immersed in this sickly yellow fog. Imagine actually breathing that in. You've got this unnatural scent of wet iron and scorched lavender literally everywhere. It's a deeply visceral warning sign, you know? It's not just a bad smell. It's the distinct olfactory signature of our grim guest's arrival, turning the very atmosphere into something entirely hostile. And well, this brings us to the entity himself, the Obsidian Doctor. Now, this isn't a human. He is a sovereign of the void. The source material describes him as this figure of impossible geometry, draped in these heavy obsidian blue robes that literally swallow the moonlight. Just imagine that heavy silk vestment hissing against the cobblestones, kind of like a nest of disturbed vipers. It's an absolutely brilliant way to establish a villain, right? Giving him a physical presence that sounds just as dangerous as it looks.
Let's move right into Section 1, Anatomy of the Nightmare, the Face of the Void.
You really have to focus on his nightmare mask here. It's this curved beak of midnight leather, definitely reminiscent of historical plague doctors, but twisted into something purely demonic. And specifically, look at those glass lenses. They are burning with a low, predatory amber glow, flickering like dying hearth fires. The text tells us that looking into those amber glowing eyes reveals a ledger of doomed cities struck through with ink. So you aren't just looking at a monster, you're looking at inevitable, bureaucratic doom.
And the contrast here is just chilling. Think about mortal doctors. They flee in terror, carrying their herbs in a desperate attempt to heal. But the Obsidian Doctor, he moves with a rhythmic, measured gait. It's the stride of a Reaper-type entity that has already won the war against time. He doesn't carry herbs, obviously. He carries a blackened bone staff to measure the depth of graves. It's this stark contrast, fragile human healers versus an unstoppable force of nature that brings no cure, only the absolute end.
Which brings us to Section 2, A Shadow of Oily Ash, the Corruption of the Canvas. We're shifting our gaze from the peaks down to the sleeping valley below. And the crazy thing is, he doesn't even have to do anything actively to destroy the environment. Wherever his shadow touches, it literally turns blades of grass into dark, oily ash. The morning dew morphs into a dark, viscous oil. And there's this faint violet frost that carries the seeds of rot. It's this incredibly potent mini-narrative of decay, perfectly captured in just a few elements. His very existence is simply incompatible with life. Get this. He doesn't even breathe our air. He consumes it. And when he exhales, he releases this freezing violet mist trailing from his robes. Think about the sensory dread of that freezing violet mist. It's an exhalation that literally carries the seeds of the world's rot. It paints this incredibly vivid picture of a walking pandemic, where even the air expelled from his lungs freezes the life out of the world.
Moving on to Section 3, The Symphony of Harvest, The Descent Begins.
We've established his terrifying look and that rotting aura. Now, the narrative builds this incredible tension step by step as he makes his physical move downward toward humanity. Step 1, he raises a finger, and the wind itself moans in submission. Step 2, the music of the spheres is replaced by a discordant drone, literally sounding like 1,000 fly wings emanating from his robes. And then, Step 3, the terrifying climax of his descent. The first village bell below tolls. But no human hand is pulling that rope. He takes a single, measured step, and the physical world is already violently reacting.
At this exact moment in the narrative, the threat completely transcends biology. The plague is no longer some microscopic sickness of the blood that you can just fight off with medicine. No, it is a conscious, walking nightmare draped in heavy silk vestments. It has become a personage of the spirit. It has intention, and honestly, that is way more terrifying than any virus.
And that leads us to Section 4, Breaking the World's Fever, the Final Surgery. The boundary between the living and the spectral is thinning out as our entity reaches his destination, and here we get his chilling justification. I want you to imagine this delivered in a cold whisper, a voice that sounds like a chorus of 1,000 parched throats. Behold, the old world is a fever that I must break. He doesn't see himself as a murderer, you see. He sees himself as a surgeon curing the universe. To him, humanity is just a fever, an infection that he's here to swiftly and coldly eradicate. As he descends to perform this final surgery on humanity, his blue-black train drags behind him like a literal funeral shroud for the entire Earth. He walks into the mist until only that curved beak and the glowing amber mask remain visible. The night grows impossibly colder, and as the text notes, the very first house in the valley goes dark forever. He has officially arrived. The myth hints at a mortal scholar stepping forward to attempt a desperate bargain with this unstoppable force. But, considering the wet iron, the oily ash, and those unblinking amber eyes, is it already too late? Will a scholar's desperate bargain actually save the valley, or has the final house already gone dark forever? Well, I'm going to leave you tucked in with your own dreadful curiosity tonight. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and keep your eyes peeled for the violet mist.